The Ryan Tubridy Show on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Sky Fibre. Super fast, totally unlimited and great value broadband.
Many of you will know my next guest from his days as a presenter here on RTE on the news at 1, and in 2001 he was diagnosed with a condition called Meniere's disease, which affects the inner ear. And like most of us when we get sick, he sought a cure for his ill, and that search led to his adventure, if you want to call it that, but certainly it brought him in a direction I suppose he never thought he'd be going in once upon a time in his life. His name is Shane Kenny. It's good to see you again, Shane. It's been a long time.
Yes, nice to see you too, Ryan.
And thank you so much for coming in to see us today. Tell us a little bit about life leading up to the illness. Was, I presume, all right for you?
It was terrific, really. I left RTE in 2003. The start of 2003, I created my own consultancy business, which was doing very well, but I was also still making documentaries for RTE and for other people. And in 2005, I became the Director of Public Affairs with Dublin City University, and I was a member of the executive board there. Life was looking good. I had very good income. I really enjoyed my job. I was enjoying my life. I was working 4 days a week, going to be working 4 days a week. I had been working 3 days a week there. And I built in expeditions all over the world because I'm a hill walker.
Yes.
And I'd been to Australia, Tasmania, the United States, the Grand Canyon, Death Valley. I took extended holidays.
Yes.
I'd take 5-6 weeks. My work-life balance was terrific.
Funny, I was just about to say, your work-life balance sounds like it was just right, and you had it right.
Yeah.
And the first inkling of a problem came along in what way?
I had been diagnosed with Meniere's disease.
Which I'd never heard of.
Yes, well, it's an inner ear condition which gives you extreme vertigo, very severe rotational vertigo. The attacks come on very suddenly. That convinces your body you're sick. You begin to throw up violently, get extreme diarrhea. All of that goes on for about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, and then it stops. And it's wonderful. And you feel great because it's passed. But I only had very irregular and infrequent attacks of this. The first one, ironically, I had was 5 days before the general election, which, as you know, I was anchoring.
Yes, indeed.
And it went on for 3 days. And at that time, we had one anchor which did the whole show. I was taken to Vincent's Hospital, and I thought I was dying. I thought I was having a brain hemorrhage. My GP got an ambulance, and I was taken down to Vincent's Hospital. Anyway, it all went away after about 3 hours. But then in 2001, I had 3 episodes on the trot each month from January, February and March in 2001, having to leave RTE with one of those attacks because and go home sick.
So they were becoming a little more regular, were they?
No. These were. It seemed like they were.
Yes.
One a month for 3 months.
Less sporadic, yes.
So I was sent to a consultant, and the consultant diagnosed Meniere's disease, and he prescribed diazepam. He prescribed it because I was going on holidays to Italy for the wedding of my niece. He prescribed me to take it for 2 weeks while I was in Italy as a preventative against Meniere's. Yes. And he said if you took this, it could prevent it. Attacks happening if you were getting stressed about anything. Stress was meant to lead to these Meniere's attacks. But I didn't take it. Well, I took 1 pill, possibly 2, and it made me feel very drowsy, kind of dreamy, and I didn't really want to feel like that, and I was feeling perfectly okay, so I threw them away.
You felt that if you weren't suffering from any of the vertigo and the symptoms of Meniere's, why would you bother taking something that was going to make you a little bit spaced out?
That's it.
Right, and you
Exactly.
threw them away and said, well,
Yeah.
You didn't keep 1 or 2 in case you had another attack of the...
Well, I didn't then,
Yes.
but I was advised to have them on hand, and particularly for travelling, because if you could identify the symptoms, because sometimes there's a little lead up to it and you begin to feel a bit nauseous
Yes.
and a bit of a headache
Here it
and
comes.
so on. It could possibly prevent the attack. So I always had them with me.
Yes.
I had an attack in 2005 when I was working at DCU, and I did take one because I kept one in my wallet for an emergency, but I started throwing up so quickly that I took the tablet, but I probably threw it up straight away.
In the meantime, you're despite all of these the attacks, if you want to call them that for now, you were holding down the job. You in DCU is where we're at now in the timeline.
Yeah,
and things were still going okay. But was there a slide then as a result?
No, in 2008, there was no problem. So I had the 3 in 2001, 1 in 2005, and back to 1992. I was walking the hillside over the Christmas vacation in Achill on Croaghaun Mountain, listening to John Kelly. And I got back to the car and I took out the headphones and I had this dreadful tinnitus. It was amazing. I couldn't hear it with the earpieces and the radio on. And it was like a tractor. I mean, it was really, really, really loud and terribly disturbing. I wondered, was it something to do with Meniere's? Because tinnitus is known as a symptom of Meniere's. But anyway, I couldn't sleep. I took the diazepam in order to get to sleep, and that helped.
What about the tinnitus? Was that persisting? Or was
very much so. And it kind of varied from, the tractor noise to a 747. That was going on all the time.
Day and night?
Day and night. It began to ease after about 4 weeks. Sure. As the tinnitus was beginning to ease, I started to get these other really, really strange symptoms. After exercising one morning, I had this terrible fullness in my ear and a sounds varying. The tinnitus was going up and down. The effect was like drowning in sound. It was echoing as well.
And did you have a sensitivity to regular sounds?
That's what happened later.
Yeah.
That was the start of sound sensitivity, which I then thought was Meniere's, and I restarted taking the odd diazepam tablet in order to counter that, and they did seem to have some alleviative effects.
Yes.
I couldn't bear being in the kitchen with the electric kettle boiling, which had never happened to me before. It was really extraordinary. And, setting the alarm at night, I couldn't bear the bleeping. Your alarm bleeps when you set it.
What do you hear? Yeah. When we hear a beeping, what are you hearing?
Well,
or were you hearing?
It's like a really sharp needle into my head, It was just, I couldn't tolerate it and I needed to get away quickly. So I had the alarm in an alcove in the house, and I just ran out of that when the alarm started. When I pressed all the buttons, I got out as quickly as possible.
You must have been adult in the extreme. I mean, adult, and with all that going on.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And it was very difficult at meetings because I couldn't bear to be in a conversation with anything other than one person at a time. And if there were a couple of people in the room and they were speaking overlapping with each other, it became intolerable. It was really, really difficult to concentrate. Meetings in the office with my own staff and university meetings.
Yes.
So whenever these kind of symptoms came up, I took a diazepam to get some alleviation, and it did for a while, but then that stopped.
And was there a time when you had to just say to work, I'm out for a little while, I need to try and sort this out because I can't focus?
Yes, well, it came a little later because I did then, I'd seen the consultant another couple of times, and I decided that I would try this preventative approach, which was to take diazepam every day for a period. Then I started to get these shooting pains in my legs. And at that stage, I realised that all these bizarre symptoms, they may have nothing to do at all with Meniere's. And certainly the shooting pains hadn't anything to do with Meniere's. And I looked at the web and discovered the Ashton Manual, as it's called, written by an expert on benzodiazepines in the UK. And that told me what I was suffering, which was the side effects of benzodiazepine.
When did Dignitas enter the equation? Because that's an organisation a lot of people will be familiar with for pretty bleak reasons, let's be honest, rightly or wrongly, and it drifted into your world for reasons that maybe you'd explain.
Yes, well, I was getting desperate, really.
Of course.
I didn't really know what to do. Not many people seemed to know very much about it. I did find a doctor through my Dublin GP who understood that benzodiazepines can cause terrible problems, but he didn't consider himself an expert on it or anything like that. But with all the symptoms I was suffering, he wanted to get me into the National Urology Hospital in London. And thankfully, he did manage to do that. But at this stage, I was waiting for the letter which would tell me to come. I'd been promised a place. Every day was such a struggle. And, I was living from, hour to hour, minute to minute, in a way that I couldn't see any quality of life coming out of this. It was also too difficult to bear. I registered with Dignitas online, but I very quickly discovered that you have to go through incredibly complicated processes in order to be accepted.
You mentioned recently that you had, to quote yourself, made other arrangements with a carpet knife. What does that mean?
Well, it means what it says. I got to the local hardware store and I bought a carpet knife. When you're in extremis, this is the kind of thing you can focus on, particularly if you want to have a way to get out of a situation if it's unbearable.
What brought you back from the brink of that particular arrangement?
There were two things, really. I mean, one was my determination that I didn't want this drug to kill me. I constantly focused on that, that I did not want that to happen. But I also had a phone call from a friend. The friend was looking for some information for a friend of his who was going to apply for a job in RTE, and he wanted a bit of guidance on that. So he was talking to me for a few minutes, and then, he said to me, "My God, there must be something wrong, are you okay?" And so I told him the story. It turned out, of course, that his brother was a neurologist I had consulted about this. He said to me, you must contact my brother, about this. And I thought, well, I will do, seeing as though this has happened. And in fact, he rang his brother to tell him that, that patient of yours is in a terrible situation. You should call him.
Did that phone call change everything?
It changed everything because of the conversation I had with the neurologist. The neurologist, he wanted me to take a drug for Parkinson's, first of all, Sinemet. But he said, failing that, the best thing, if it's unbearable, is to retake the diazepam. Because if it's caused these symptoms, it should be of some assistance. I started retaking the diazepam. At first, it didn't make much difference. I had to end up taking twice or three times the dose I had taken before in order to get some relief. But it did give me some relief. All the symptoms, the shooting pains, the muscular pains, they were all still there, but they were off the edge, let's say. They weren't going to push me over the brink.
I can, talking to you now, you're a different man to the one you just described a few minutes ago, who sounded so broken and on the brink. And now you're here today. You're talking. You've made a documentary. You've a passion for the subject now.
Yes.
What do you want people to take from our discussion, our chat this morning, Shane?
Well, the most important thing is that these drugs, the family of benzodiazepines, can cause these long-term side effects.
Yes.
They, for the majority of people who suffer from these side effects, they do go away. But for a significant minority, like me, they can go on for years and years. Mine are still going on, as you know, at this moment. I've got these electric pains shooting around my legs. Last night, I was woken at 3 o'clock in the morning with very severe stomach pains and with extreme nausea. So I didn't get much sleep last night.
Do you intend to get back into the cycle again and pick yourself up if you can do such a thing? Or do you think you're going to be working on recovery?
Well, I think I'm going to be working on recovery.
Sure.
And I'm going to be working on my quality of life. I mean, I've devoted time to making this documentary because I felt that I really had to do something.
Will people be able to watch the documentary, or is that a work in progress?
Well, that'll be a work in progress because I made the documentary out of my own resources.
Yes.
It's outside the commissioning system, so there isn't really a mechanism that I know of about how you bring it to people's attention.
Sure.
So this is what I'm in the process of doing now, to try and demonstrate to people that there is a really serious long-term problem out of these drugs. There are very many people like me with this in the United States, in the UK, in Japan,
no doubt,
all over, and in Ireland. In fact, I've already got an email from a woman in County Waterford who is nearly 4 years off benzodiazepines, off diazepam as well, and she's suffering very similar neuropathic pains that I suffer from. One wonderful thing happened to me during this experience. 5 years ago, at the wedding of a very good friend of mine, Martin Hayes. You probably know him. I'm sure
indeed.
You've interviewed him. He's a most genius, a musical genius.
He is a fine
he got
musician.
married to a Spanish lady called Lena Pelez. And at the wedding was her best friend, Victoria Martos.
Is this going the way I hope it goes?
Exactly.
Go on, what happened?
Well, we became an item out of that.
Well done.
You know the old story in Ireland, out of every wedding there's the makings of another. Well, anyway, I hope that's going to happen next year.
Oh, how gorgeous. Well, congratulations.
But Victoria has been able to take all of this in her stride, and she's been a marvellous support. And in this kind of condition, I thought, all of that was over in my life. But that has given me another thing to live for. And I will try to continue to the battle about benzodiazepines to get people, to get the medical establishment to recognise, that there is a really serious problem here. The British Medical Association have given me a statement for the documentary, which is exclusive, really.
Good.
They haven't said this anywhere before, where they accept that benzodiazepines can cause short-term as well as long-term harm. And they also go on to say that there is not enough research done about the long-term effects of these drugs, and that not enough is known about the condition of people who are suffering from these long-term effects at the moment. Yeah. And they want more research done on it. And I really want that too.
All right, Shane, no better man to lead the charge. And thank you so much for coming to see us. I wish you well physically, psychologically, emotionally and romantically in the future.
Well, thank you very much.
It's been very nice to see you. Shane Kenny,
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. The text number this morning, as always, 51551.